Hello and welcome, or welcome back to the Sales Enablement Festival. I hope you're enjoying the event so far because we've got even more great content heading your way. Remember to have your questions at the ready and get the tailored answers you need from the experts themselves. Thank you again to our sponsors and partners for helping us bring this event to life. Don't forget, if you're enjoying the content from the festival, be sure to check out the SEC membership plans. You can find more information about this over on the Sales Enablement Collective website. Sit back and enjoy the next talk. Hello everyone and welcome back to this next talk, which is hosted by Eli Cohen, who is the CEO of SalesHood, and he's going to talk to you all about measuring and correlating sales enablement metrics that matter most. So I'd like to welcome Eli to the stage.
Hello, I'm here now, right?
Yeah, you are.
Hello everyone. Jack, thank you, and it's great to be here, and always a pleasure to be sharing the virtual stage with you. And everyone, I am super excited to talk today about measuring metrics and KPIs to quickly move the revenue needle. Now, this is an important talk, and it's going to be, as always, entertaining but educational, and I'm excited to be here. Now, I am home today in San Francisco, and my dog Louie is here with me. So if he jumps in and says hello, then that's c'est la vie, as they say. So let me start with a story. And before I do that, so my name is Eli. I'm the CEO and co-founder of SalesHood, and just again excited to be here. And so let me start with a story. And so last week I was speaking with an amazing enablement leader, and she is super experienced, been doing enablement for about 10 years, and she comes from the marketing background, and we're talking strategy and tactics. And I asked her, I said, so how do you measure the impact? How do you measure the impact of all the great programs that you're running? And we were specifically talking about a virtual program around bootcamp onboarding. And her answer was, kind of hesitated a little bit and said, well, time to first deal, time to second deal. And so kind of I paused, and it became apparent to me that as enablement professionals, our skills and competencies, what we're great at coaching, we're great at building content, we're great at facilitating training, we're great at doing the work, we're super creative at rolling out programs, we're amazing program managers. But when it comes to moving the revenue needle and impacting revenue outcomes, we tend to be challenged a little bit. We don't have clarity of thought, and we don't have clarity of vision around what data and what metrics we should be running. And that's why, I decided to do this talk today on, measuring the metrics and KPIs that ultimately will move revenue needles. And, the answer to my friend when we were speaking the other day was, have you thought about, measuring some leading indicators around activities like creating contacts, emailing contacts, right? If we want to help our teams be successful, we got to get early stage leading indicators. And so that story, I hope, represents, where I think a lot of people are. And some of you are amazing at metrics and KPIs, and please share your comments and insights. And it's great seeing everyone from around the world. So over the next 25 minutes, we're going to talk about the challenges with metrics and KPIs, specifically focusing on revenue enablement and enablement professionals. We're going to dive deep on leading versus lagging indicators. I think it's an important concept, and I wanted to spend some time on it with you so folks can get comfortable with it and understand it and then lean into it and embrace it. And I'm going to give you a template, right? How do you manage up, right? How do you manage up with data? And then we're going to show you how you can get started so you can do this at scale. So let's jump in. So, what's your current situation today? How are your teams doing? Feel free to add some comments in here. How are your teams doing with ramp? How are your teams doing with win rates? How are your teams doing with quota attainment and the distribution of quota attainment across the organization? We're seeing a lot of companies around the world, 50% of their revenue comes from 20%, right? So I'm going to ask you, right, what are you measuring and what does performance look like with your teams, right? And we all just kind of fall back on ramp time and win rates and quota, and those are so important to measure, but these are lagging indicators. And so I do want to make sure that each of you appreciates the importance of measuring these metrics and KPIs. But at the same time, what we're seeing is while we talk a lot about quota, ramp, attainment, and all that good stuff, when you sit down and you dive into the details and you ask yourself, well, what are you really measuring? And you ask enablement professionals, how they measure outcomes, the answers that we see a lot are, well, we're measuring completions of the training and the assessments and the quizzes, and did everyone record their pitch? We're measuring consumption, right? Like, are they watching the videos? Are they downloading the files? Are they using the file? Kind of interesting. And we're measuring certifications, and they stop, right? So the enablement industry needs to build standards, and we need to elevate how and what we're measuring. And that's why this talk is here today. And so I want to introduce you to kind of three concepts: activity metrics, conversion metrics, and then outcome metrics. And, the conversion metric, the activity metrics are things like calls made, emails sent, meetings held, opportunities created. This is all data within Salesforce and within Microsoft and any CRM system that you're using. And so you just need to be on top of your productivity metrics, and you got to know your KPIs. And then you want to look at conversion metrics, right? The movement of activity, right? Leads to meetings, meetings to opportunities, stage 1 to, this is all great data. And then you want to look at outcome metrics, right? But the more that you can understand and get access to information around activity metrics and conversion metrics, the bigger impact you're going to have on the business, and the faster that you're going to actually move that revenue needle up and to the right. And so the question is, why are metrics and KPIs so hard to come by? Why are they so hard to understand? I've thought a lot about this, over the last few years, and I've come up with 5 reasons, right? Number 1, I think it's really hard to understand the process, right? And we need to, in order to really understand metrics and KPIs, we need to understand our processes, our lead processes, our sales processes, our buyer journeys, our customer success, our renewals, our quote to cash, right? How are we going to measure improvements in activities if we don't really understand our processes? So as leaders, as enablement professionals, we need to really understand our processes. And that means grabbing a whiteboard, check by check, drawing the boxes, understanding how the flow of data and the flow of workflow works. But it's hard. And a lot of the times when we step into these roles, they're not documented. And so number 1 reason why metrics and KPIs are hard is, we just struggle understanding and documenting the processes. Number 2 is data access, right? A lot of revenue leaders that I've spoken with over the years, when I ask them and I say, as an operational leader, what advice would you give enablement professionals? Their advice is universal. Get access to the data, ask for it. Make sure your login to Salesforce and Microsoft is working. Make sure that you can touch the data, feel the data, run the reports, set up your filters. You've got to access the data. If you don't have access to the data, you don't know where to look for it, go look for it, ask for it. Don't be shy. And then I think another reason why metrics and KPIs are hard is it's hard work to get alignment with stakeholders. And that means something like this. Before you roll out a program, sit down with your frontline manager, sit down with marketing, sit down with your CRO and ask, what do we want to measure? What outcomes do we want to impact? Why are we rolling out this program? And then be quiet and get the feedback, right? And then after a program or during it, when you start looking at some data, when you start getting some data, it's super fascinating. A dear friend of mine, Carol Sestala, said one of the things she does around intentional enablement leadership is, she'll open up the data and then ask the leaders and the marketers to share what are they seeing, what insights are they seeing. That way you can really uncover the impact that the data is having. And so thank you, Carol, for that. And then number 4, you got to be disciplined about benchmarking, right? You're going to roll out a new program. What are you benchmarking? What are you going to improve? What are you going to impact? And then finally, the reason why metrics and KPIs are hard is it requires creativity. We need to be creative about where the data is, how to report on it, how to correlate it. And there's so much here, but hopefully, if you're struggling with any one of these 5, there's a lot of work written. We've got a ton of blogs and just want to impress upon you to lean into these. And let's, as an industry, let's accept that these are hard and let's try and solve these problems together. Now, I could spend an entire week running a workshop just on these 5 topics. And, I've got, a short time here to kind of impress upon you the importance of measuring and impacting metrics and KPIs to move the needle. And I wanted to really focus in on one of the key areas. The key area I want to focus on is the difference between lagging indicators versus leading indicators, right? And I think hopefully everyone understands these terms. And, a lagging indicator, strangely enough, is revenue, quota attainment, bookings, right? Cross-sell, upsell, like all those revenue metrics that measure growth. But if we're gonna wait 12 months to look at the revenue outcomes, then it's too late, right? So we need to start dialing back and kind of creating a sequence of events almost with activities and saying, well, if revenue growth is the lagging indicator that we ultimately want to get to, what are the things our teams need to do in order to lift the growth goals and the growth targets and the growth outcomes? That's what leading indicators are. And think of a funnel and think of all the things we want our teams to do. So leading indicators are things that are early stage, front of the funnel that we can view, inspect, and influence and coach around. And lagging indicators is really, you're kind of looking in your rearview mirror and you're looking back. Okay, well that happened. Now what? At least leading indicators, you can still impact the future. So I wanted to highlight the difference between those 2 terms for everyone and really get you comfortable to understand it. And as I go a little deeper and I go, okay, lagging indicators are too late. They're too late. If we're measuring the success of our enablement teams, if we're trying to impact the productivity of our teams, and if we're only ever looking at these lagging indicators, then it's already too late. And you've missed those coaching opportunities. You've missed those opportunities to help reduce the productivity, right? On average, depending on who you talk to, whether it's sales manager, association, the training industry, anywhere from 10 to 12 months is how long it takes a new hire to get productive. If you're waiting, and that what productive means is different. And if you're waiting for those 10 or 12 months to start measuring success, it's bad. So you got to look for those leading indicators. So here are some examples. While these are all really important to measure and you want to correlate and you want to really get the health of your programs, we got to go up. We got to go a step further and we got to start looking at leading indicators. And so I've created a list here for you around some leading indicators that will impact productivity super fast. Now, these are things that we know our sellers are doing. These are things that we know our teams are focused on. And, contacts emailed, right? Super simple. How many emails of my new contacts emailed in their first week or their first 2 weeks on the job, right? Super interesting. How many sequences have been executed? How many calls have been made, right? There was, some of our customers boast that after 7 days, their SDRs are able to be hitting the phones and doing 100 calls a day. Amazing. Now that's a great leading indicator. I love it. Meeting scheduled, right? Quota carrying rep, regardless of the size of quota, regardless of how much tenure, don't we want to know that they're scheduling meetings within the first few weeks of being on the job, right? Versus waiting till that lagging indicator. Leads qualified. How effective are they qualifying leads? Now, opportunities created is a great one because that's a measure of success. Are they actually creating pipeline? Are they self-sourcing pipeline? And then I love looking at follow-up notes. I love looking at the detail of follow-up notes, right? So after someone has their first meeting and they've done their first discovery call and, let's look at the actual follow-up email and let's review it. Let's provide coaching around it. Let's measure how many follow-up emails they've had. And then let's look at stage conversion. So this is a great list of not the exhaustive list. There's many more, but leading indicators to quickly impact productivity. And I really hope that at this point, you're starting to think a little creatively about the data and the metrics that you can measure to quickly move the needle. And so here's a visual. It's a sales funnel, right? And so a buyer's journey, right? Prospecting, diagnosing, prescribing, gaining commitment. That's just, kind of a template. And what we want to impress upon you is look for front of the funnel, right? So look at the leading activities around calls, emails, meetings. Start measuring those in the first 30 days. Back to that first story I shared, when I was talking to that enablement professional, once we dove into the virtual bootcamp and we're able to realize that they're training their teams on sequences, on writing emails, but they're not really measuring the impact, we realized that would be an amazing way to measure. Those leading indicators would be great indicators for frontline managers and for the leadership team to get a sense of the health of their new virtual new hire class a lot earlier than the 10 to 12 month traditional time people wait to look to see if they're productive. I love looking at discovery calls. So I wanted to provide those same leading indicators, but give you a visual here across the buyer's journey. So each of you should have your own buyer's journey. You should have a documented sales process. Look for the activities and then start measuring them. Specifically for onboarding, measure them as leading indicators. And you can also measure them around, anytime you roll out a new product. You can measure these for playbooks. You can measure these for any campaign you have as an enablement professional. And order sent. These are the leading indicators that are ahead of the lagging ones, which are specific to revenue growth. And, here's a slide I wanted to highlight, which now is going a little deeper. Now let's go, okay, we hear you, we understand. Leading indicators, lagging indicators. I've been mostly talking about quota carrying sellers, which is great. They represent, over 15 million sellers in the US alone. So they're a large group of people that we got to lift the productivity of. But what about other roles? What about sales development? What about customer success? How do we measure the health of and the productivity of our managers in a proactive way with leading indicators? But you got to get the data. And so, what we're doing here is we're saying, listen, we want to measure calls made, emails made, and meetings scheduled. We got to know what those numbers are. We got to know what they are. And we got to track them, and we got to measure them in the first week, second week, first month, second month. We got to know what they are. And then we got to benchmark our sales development team across those numbers on a regular basis. Now, where are we going to get the data from? Right. And so that's either going to live in Salesloft and Salesforce and Outreach. You're going to correlate that data with the activity data and all the training and enablement data in Salesforce, and boom, magic's going to happen. You will see that correlation. This is what correlation analysis is. Correlation analysis is the ability to correlate activities with, performance activities with enablement activities. And this is so hard. This is hard work for all the reasons I described before. And so what we're doing is we're trying to share with you, here are some examples so you can take it back to your teams. And here are some ways that you are able to elevate your programs, because guess what? If you had access to all this data, if you could correlate the data to your programs, you'll know what's working, what's not working. Look at customer success. I love looking at non-sales roles. I know we're in the Sales Enablement Festival, but hey, aren't we all in sales? And the customer success team, I think I want to measure time to first outreach. I want to measure, kind of their first QBR, right? It's not about pitch. It's not about a demo. It's their first QBR that they're hosting with their customers, and like you correlate it with activity data in Gainsight. Again, examples just to provide you a picture of how to measure metrics and KPIs that will ultimately move the needle faster. And these are all onboarding examples, which I think are fabulous. And so I do have some examples. I love sharing successes of folks in our community. Callie Act is an amazing professional. And so I've got 3 examples that we're going to share with you. Domo is an amazing partner and a customer of ours. And, the problem that they had to solve was, they were rolling out new sales plays, industry plays, persona plays, and they did this post-pandemic. They did this last year. And then within the first 30, 60, 90 days, they were generating insane pipeline. So they were correlating the training and the coaching and the pitch practice and all the activities that you do with pipeline creation data, so that way they could understand if the plays that they were rolling out were ultimately driving the outcomes of generating pipeline. And that was a leading indicator to them growing new business. And then 90 days later, 120 days later, they communicate to the street that their new account growth grew by 26%, right? So this is an example of correlating a sales play with pipeline created. And you can see here the quote, spectacular, the highest new pipeline ever in Domo history, which is amazing. I love it. Another great story here, Carol, I mentioned Carol in my talk earlier, and Carol's an amazing practitioner and she's spectacular. We love working with her and her team in Power School. It's amazing. And so here's what they do. They're sharing content with their buyers, right? They're selling K through 12 and, huge demand in the market for the work that they're doing. Everything is virtual. And so they know that when they have a buyer that's interested in the Power School SaaS offering for K through 12, they know that if they can get them more files, if they can share with them the presentations, if they can share assets with them, and they know if they can get that information to them, that they know that will have a positive effect on the deals, on the forecast. And so you can see here, they're measuring and they're correlating presentations shared by sellers and the number of presentations shared, and most importantly, the views and the downloads of those presentations by the buyers with the health of the forecast, and they're using it as a predictive leading indicator for deal trends. Spectacular, right? Again, creative, super, super creative, right? It's not just about looking at quota, right? So I can look at a seller's performance and I can say, yeah, you know what? They're going to make their number. They're sending out all these presentations and they're getting great opens and great views, and the deals that the salesperson is saying you're going to close, they most likely will, because the data is saying that there's high interest and high intent. So I love it. And I love the comment, from Siobhan, enablement done right. Thank you. Great to see you on here, Siobhan. And here's someone that very, very, very well. Sarah. Sarah is an amazing practitioner. We've been working with Ring Central for years. Sarah is on Siobhan Thatcher's team. Sarah Frick is spectacular. This is a program that we did together, a couple of years back that stood out for me when we are talking about correlating activities, right? And so we've talked a lot about salespeople, customer success folks, presentations, content sharing. What about managers? How do we know if our managers are doing the right things? How do we know if our managers are right? And so Sarah rolled out an amazing program where they measured the quality and quantity of manager coaching conversations. Guess what? That's just activity data, right? And so they were able to correlate the number and the quality and quantity of those conversations to pipeline and to win rates, and both improved, right? So they knew, hey, if you're a manager, and we want you to be successful, you need to have X number of coaching conversations on a monthly basis, because guess what? If you do that, then your team will generate more pipe. And so 3 scenarios, 3 examples that I wanted to share. And I always love providing some templates and tips. And so what I get asked all the time is, how do I, as an enablement professional, how do I manage up? How do I share the successes that we're working on? How do we share our successes across the organization with our leaders? How do we share successes with our frontline managers? And so I've created, the idea is, as a leader, you're going to send either a weekly or a monthly kind of highlights email, and an executive highlights email. And first off, when you send these emails to your CRO or your GM or your CEO or your frontline leaders or your CMO or any sales leader in your organization, you got to be crisp. You got to make that email super easy to read. I love bolding sections. You got to use bullets. You got to use images. You got to share links so they can access the information. You got to keep it real and no BCC. Be transparent, be open, right? So those are just some email communication tips. But here's an anatomy of a great exec email. Let's pretend that we're celebrating the success of an amazing bootcamp onboarding program that we just finished. And the headline, the subject line, just like those marketing emails, could be something like, 50 sellers ready to start self-sourcing pipeline. Like, boom, check out that subject line. And then the opening line can be something like, we're really excited that this month we were able to graduate over 50 sellers. We want to give you an overview and some details around kind of how they've gone through it. And then you provide the program summary. Maybe you talk about some of the curriculum they've gone through, some of the outcomes, some of the impacts that they've already been able to celebrate, whether it's contacts created or sequences executed or activities done or meetings scheduled, something, right? Share some examples. Include a couple pictures of some folks. This is our top rookie of the month, and then talk about your priorities and what's next and what's coming up next. And then close with an ask and say, hey, listen, it would be great if you're able to record a welcome video to our upcoming pitch challenge, or it'd be great if you were able to join, or whatever that ask is, right? But this is an email template. You can see how it's structured. You can see that these 7 numbers would be bulleted, and you can see how appreciative your leadership team will be if you're sending these on a regular basis. But they've got to be impacts driven, and you got to have the metrics and the KPIs to prove value. It's not okay to just say we had 100% completion. What was the impact? And push yourself to the impact. Have a link to examples and have a link to data so you can prove and you can visualize that impact. And so And look at our customers. Our customers are realizing amazing impacts. And so, we saw the Domo story, we saw the Ring Central story, and there's some amazing impacts. And they're correlating, they're measuring, and they're doing great things in the industry. These are all amazing companies and amazing leaders to look out for. And why? They're taking a holistic process around sales enablement. It's a process. This is what great sales enablement looks like. Now, what's interesting here is think about everything I've talked about. Metrics and KPIs. We want to get leading early stage activities, right? So when we are publishing our training and when we're publishing plays and we're publishing presentations and we're publishing new product learnings, whatever we're doing, we want to teach people, we want to measure that they're learning. We want them to practice. We want to measure that they're practicing. We want to assess. We want to assess that they're doing. We want to look at feedback from their peers, feedback from their managers. We want to apply. So now we want to see the emails that they're writing or the presentation that they're sharing or the discovery calls that they're hosting or the follow-up meeting notes. See how much data you're collecting here. And then you want to see kind of the coaching. And then you want to see how they're actually, what are their conversion rates? What are their win rates? And then you want to see their actual closed. And then you want to correlate, right? And so imagine that you had all this data for every one of your sellers across all your activities and all your processes. It seems daunting, but it's possible. Our great customers are doing that today. They're capturing and they're rolling out great sales enablement and they're following the process. And the process is proven. But you want to measure it, and you want to measure it every step of the way. And we're super excited. I think we've rolled out a correlation engine. This is new. It's on the App Exchange. It's in Salesforce. You can use the correlation engine inside Salesforce, or you can use the correlation engine inside your BI tool. And here's just a sample chart, right? This is where you want to get to. I want to see completion or certification or consumption. I want to correlate it to pipeline. These little charts here represent goodness. This here is someone doing great. Down here, someone needs to do a little more work here in order to lift their productivity. And so we're so excited about what we're doing. We're so excited to help you and your teams elevate how you are driving impact and how you're moving the needle. And, if anyone is interested in learning more, we do have a trial and you're able to jump in and use SalesHood or reach out to me. But this is SalesHood. We're all about learning, coaching, selling, and correlating. We're all about correlating, which is so critical. We've spent so much time over the last 24 months investing in our correlation engine so we can help you prove the impact and help you elevate your programs and elevate your careers. And here's an offer that we're going to make available to everyone listening in. We have a leadership course, spectacular. This is open to any enablement practitioner. And you can see here, we've curated the best of the best. There's Siobhan Thatcher, Lori Schrager, Callie Apt, Aaron Farley, Lillian Wynn. I've done a little bit of content in there, and then Werner Schmidt from Sage. They've each recorded their best practices, and we've got a self-paced course, and we've got a course that you can run in a facilitated way. It's 6 classes, 30 minutes each. It's incredible. And so you can go to this URL, you can find it on our homepage, saleshood.com. But this is a free offer that we're making available to the entire industry. And so with that, I want to say thank you. And I really hope that everybody has been able to walk away with a few tips to measure the metrics and KPIs that will ultimately help you, move that revenue needle faster so you can deliver the revenue outcomes and have such an amazing impact to your teams, to your businesses, and honestly to yourself, to your career, because you want to make the impact and you want to prove the impact. And we're here to help. You can reach out to me. There's my Twitter handle. I'll have the videos will be posted. The slides will be posted. You can get my book. You can request a trial or sign up for the course. Love to see you. And with that, I want to say thank you very much for having me here at the festival.
Thank you so much, Eli. Brilliant presentation as always. So there are a few questions coming in. If anyone does have any questions, please do drop them into the chat. And I'll also try and get the sun out my eyes. So the first question is, calls are great leading indicators, but what about the connects and the message being delivered is also effective and relevant? Does that come after?
No, absolutely. Right. I'm just giving examples, right? So connects are so critical, right? I've got to be, and so just, Jack, can we just define connects? When we say connects, we mean like actual getting someone on the phone or having someone respond. Is that what you mean by connects?
I think so. Shannon, maybe you could elaborate slightly on the question you asked.
Oh, let me see here. I can read it too. Calls are greatly, but what about the connects and the messaging being delivered? Absolutely. So listen, the reason why we're measuring, like when in someone's first week, if you have a new hire, let's look at onboarding for a moment. And within the first few days, they should be practicing the pitch. They should be practicing leaving voicemails. They should be practicing a short pitch and a long pitch. We want to ultimately see if the core messaging is resonating and if they personalize it. So those are leading indicators, right? So when we're looking for leading indicators, I can tell you within the first week, if I've got a cohort of 50 new people starting in a virtual boot camp, if the task is you're going to record a pitch at the end of the first week for messaging, right? And the task is you're going to go connect with 10 new prospects. It's crazy doing that in the first week, but I think you should. You'll see how quickly people get that done. Those are leading indicators to how motivated are they? How much are they leaning into your programs? Because if they're not going to practice the pitch, record their pitch, be awesome on that pitch, even if they're reading, they could read from a script, it's okay, but they still got to show up, right? They still got to go with all, and if they're not going to do it in that first or second week, then are they really going to do it 3 months later? So for example, if you're training your people on the sales process, and if you're asking them to write follow-up summary notes, and if your sales team and your customer success team are kind of writing, like half-assed notes, like, thank you very much for your time. And if they're not being thoughtful about it, oh, this is just training, don't worry about it. Well, wait a minute, slow down. If you're not being thoughtful about it in the construct of a training and a practice with your team, then prove to me that you're going to be thoughtful about it. So these are all leading indicators, Jack, that we need to be looking at to get a complete picture of the team and how they're going to be successful.
Yeah, great answer. So the next question is, at what stage would those indicators start coming into play?
Right. Before they even show up to boot camp. Right. And so like from day one. Right. So I the moment someone signs their offer letter, right, they should get access to an onboarding program inside of a system like SalesHood. And in that system, they should be asked to start watching some videos, start connecting with peers, start practicing their messages, right? I should be looking at those leading indicator activities in the first few days. And then there should be tasks that you're giving them in the first week or two that gets them practicing, go into Salesforce or Microsoft and find 10 contacts in your territory, use these email templates and email them and see if you get any responses, right? Let's not wait until we get people to actually practice. If I roll out, a product training or you're rolling out a new product, right? Don't we want to know like pretty quickly how applicable that is to their territory? So the sooner, that's the whole point of leading indicators versus lagging indicators. The sooner we can measure meaningful, purposeful data, the better we're going to be.
Great answer. So the next question is it possible to include social media channels, e.g. LinkedIn, as indicators?
Yeah, I think as long as the data is accessible, for sure. I think so let's take a step back for a second. And if it's true that we want our sales team to be thought leaders, and if we believe having them post online or share or reshare content on LinkedIn, just simple posting, if that's a part of our go-to-market, which I've seen several successful companies have that piece, that way you can have an extension, then yeah, we should be measuring, how many of our sellers have done posts this week, right? And or this month, and we should be comparing and benchmarking. You can now look at all the posts inside of the LinkedIn messaging. LinkedIn also rolled out video prospecting, so all of that should be taken into account. They should be calculated, benchmarked, and should be part of the overall health of I believe, I don't think social selling is separate and then you sell. I think we're just selling. And it turns out that now we can sell using tools like LinkedIn, Twitter, public messages, private messaging, video, it's all there, right? And as long as you go back to the examples I gave with access to the data, as long as you've got access to the data and you don't make it too onerous on your people to self-report, then it's money. It's money, literally money.
Absolutely. So the next question is, collecting performance data is one of the first questions asked. The challenge over my career has been getting senior management to pay for it versus for the tools and learning. You're obviously in this business. Any suggestions or tricks to get them to pay for it?
Getting senior to Yeah. So let's go back to that managing up template that I provided you. If you make a business case, right? So the last course, the last class in our course is building the business case. It's there for a reason, right? I think you want to build the case, and that case needs to be built. It's the whole purpose of this talk: metrics and KPIs, right? So what are you going to impact? If you're going to ask for more resources, you're going to ask for better systems, you're going to ask for, more training, you're going to ask for more, whatever you need more of. I'm not just going to give you, access to dollars. You got to build a business case. And I think enablement professionals need to be better at building those business cases. They need to be better at communicating those business cases up. They need to be better at extracting from activity data the core metrics that they want to influence. And so, yeah, there easily could have been another slide in the deck, which is, and then in addition to managing up with executive communications, there's a slide, around business case. And Jack, if you look at the previous talk I did on what it takes to be a high impact revenue leader, the back half of that talk is all about building the business case. And Werner Schmidt has done a great job. Siobhan Thatcher is an amazing leader, right? She's been able to invest and grow her team, and it's all because they've been able to build a business case grounded in metrics and KPIs, and they're willing to put their professional reputation and outcomes on the line because they and by the way, all you could do is provide an estimate, right? I think what will be appreciated by our leaders is, hey, here's a thoughtful, intentional leader who is saying, I believe I can grow pipeline by 5% if we invest in a LinkedIn program, or if we train our people on LinkedIn prospecting, or I believe if we buy SalesHood, we'll see a lift in productivity by 20, whatever those numbers are. You got to build a business case. Whatever investments you want to make, you got to build the case. But building the case is hard, and it's got to be tight, and it's got to be concise, and it's got to be compelling, but it's got to be numbers based.
Yeah, absolutely. Good advice. And the last question we have is, how do you benchmark leading indicators for experienced sellers in different markets, small markets, mid and enterprise, and across channels, i.e. inside and field?
Right. So if a leading indicator, for example, I mentioned a few, right? Let's look at a leading indicator in terms of emails or email sent, or let's look at a leading indicator as new opportunities created. So you just benchmark it, right? I think that's the thing, right? I think enablement professionals think it's this like black box, right? I would log into Salesforce. I'm a Salesforce user. I would log into Salesforce. I'd create a report and I go, okay, let me look at the SMB segment. Let me look at the pipeline created for the last 12 months. Let me look at it month over month and let me trend it. Okay, on average, we're generating $1.1 million in pipeline across 50 reps. Got it. That's a number. Therefore, that's the benchmark for that segment. And then I would take a screenshot of that report and I'd integrate it with whatever training I'm doing. And I'm saying, listen, here's what your peers are doing, right? So now this is the goal. Now let's see who can shoot higher. And I would run that report. I would do that for the different segments and then just benchmark the activity data that way.
Yeah, perfect. And hopefully that answers the question. That is unfortunately all the time we have. Eli, thank you so much for the presentation and taking the time to answer questions. And everyone who tuned in, thank you as well so much. If you would like to continue the conversation with Eli, please do connect with him over on LinkedIn, and I'm sure he'll be more than happy to continue the conversation there. So yeah, with that said, Eli, thank you, and we'll see you all very soon.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the entire team, and congrats to all my speakers, or all my fellow speakers who are presenting. There's some amazing speakers. Yeah, you got to go check them out, especially Sarah. Sarah's speaking in a little bit. Go check out Sarah Frickstock. She's amazing.
Perfect. Thanks, Eli. Thanks, everyone.